It's time for final predictive mock drafts. So here's my best guess as to what's going to happen Thursday night today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, and of course, a big welcome to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, happy National Kyle's microphone dies on the day before the draft day to you. What's this mock draft drop series that we are doing?
Let's just put this down as just a one-time holiday, right? Not like in every year on the day before the draft, but just this one time.
That would be fine with me. I am in the process of researching where I can go right now to go buy a microphone as compared to, because like we have to do mine today too. And so I am really not trying to do mine on AirPods too. So we're probably going to finish this, and then I'm probably going to see where I can go and buzz out and pick up a Blue Yeti microphone, or maybe a different kind of microphone. Who knows? But your mock draft's done.
Yeah, so listen, if you don't want to know exactly what's going to happen Thursday night, you may want to stop listening right here because I'm about to spoil the whole thing. Yeah, right. I don't feel great about it, but this is my best guess as to how I think things will unfold. And Kyle had a nice tease there. Later on today, you're going to get Kyle Krabs' final 2023 predictive mock draft. So not your only episode coming today. That's coming later this afternoon. So make sure that you are dialed into that. And then, of course, be ready to come back and see us during the draft. We're doing a live broadcast starting 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. We'll be here the whole way with you on Thursday night, all of Friday night. And then after each round on Saturday, we're going to pop in. And so tons of coverage coming on the Locked On NFL Scouting YouTube channel. Make sure that you hit subscribe. We're going to have all the other local hosts as well to really cover this conversation from every angle. So make sure you don't miss it. Come join us for the actual draft as well. So without further ado.
Yeah, it's time to go, huh?
Here it is. This is my my best guess as to what's going to happen here. And Kyle hasn't seen this yet himself. So he's going to get this for the first time just like you are here. So let's do it. We'll start with the top 10 picks here at number 1, Carolina Panthers. I have them selecting Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. I think that's pretty chalky at this point. And then things get interesting. At number 2, I have the Houston Texans sticking and picking edge rusher Tyree Wilson. Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. I feel like that's the toolsy play. We saw this a little bit last year where the NFL went with Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. Maybe it happens again. Tyree Wilson over Will Anderson. I think Tyree Wilson's such a natural fit as that left defensive end in D'Amico Ryan's defense. And think about what Nick Bosa brought to him in San Francisco. I think he's going to want that type of player. And I got a little bit of a feeling Houston is going to be able to wait and get the quarterback they want. So stay tuned for that with what they do at pick 12. At number 3, Arizona Cardinals. They're elated. They get Will Anderson, the edge rusher from Alabama. So Alabama players, 2 of the first 3 off the board. Number 4, the Indianapolis Colts. I have them going to the quarterback. I have them picking Anthony Richardson out of Florida. There's a quote from Chris Ballard that really stands out to me that I can't shake. He says all the time how much he likes to draft unique football players. Can you think of a more unique football player than Anthony Richardson? We're talking about a quarterback. I think that's going to be his guy.
You will not find a more unique quarterback than Anthony Richardson.
No, and I leaned into that. Number 5, Seattle Seahawks, Jalen Carter, Georgia defensive tackle. I feel like that's the first spot that makes sense for him. I know that not every team's going to have an appetite for him. I think Seattle's that type of team that has shown us time and time again that they're willing to bring in players that maybe have some questions but have a lot of talent. That's obviously the case with Jalen Carter. Number 6, the Detroit Lions, Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois. The first time I watched Devin Witherspoon play football, I thought to myself, Detroit Lion. They trade away Jeff Okudah. Here he is. It just makes a lot of sense to me. Number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders. This was the first pick where I really kind of stressed over it because I could see them going offensive tackle. I could see them going with a quarterback. I have Will Levis and C.J. Stroud on the board. I have them going with a cornerback, Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. They got a lot of high-flying passing offenses in that AFC West and in the AFC in general, but Herbert twice a year. They've got Patrick Mahomes twice a year. They got whatever Sean Payton's going to cook up with Denver. I think they need to help their secondary. And number 8, Atlanta Falcons, Nolan Smith, the edge rusher from Georgia. I know they drafted Ebiketie and D'Angelo Malone last year, but I think this team is realizing that their sack production has just been awful. And Nolan Smith I think he's a souped-up Hassan Reddick. I think he's a more bursty, bendy Hassan Reddick that's a way better run defender. And so I love the prototype for them. And number 9, Chicago Bears, Paris Johnson, offensive tackle, Ohio State, have them picking an offensive lineman there to round out their improvements for Justin Fields. And then at number 10, here comes the tomatoes, Kyle. Philadelphia Eagles, running back, Bijan Robinson.
He did it.
What did he say yesterday? He said he wanted to play with Jalen Hurts. Love the relationships that he had in the building. I feel like the Philadelphia Eagles are either going to pick Bijan Robinson at 10 or Jahmyr Gibbs with their second first-round pick. So there's my top 10.
So you're confident Howie Roseman's going running back in the first round after all?
Yeah, I do. I think it happens.
Okay. Filing away notes, observations for the reactions that you get for what to expect if there is any overlap with my picks comes up. But I think the general consensus is Built Bar is probably top of the first round protein bar, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know me, Kyle. What did I do before we logged in here? I ate a Built Bar right here. We got the cookie dough. Built Bars are awesome. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but maybe you don't want all the sugar and calories, you got to check out the best tasting protein bar on the planet, Built Bar. These things are awesome. They're awesome because they taste so good and they're healthy for you. They taste so good because they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in amazing flavors like churro and peanut butter brownie and cookies and cream and brownie batter puff. And they're crazy healthy for you. Low sugar, low calorie, high in protein. We all want a little more lean protein. Well, get yourself some Built Bars. They are fantastic. And look, you can go to Built.com, get yourself a box, use our promo code LOCKEDON15, get 15% off your next order. You can also go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and pick one up off the shelf. So check them out. You'll thank us later.
So top 10 is done. Not chalk with my top 10, but there's some overlap with my top 10.
Especially at number 1, I'm guessing.
Overlap? Yeah. I'm not going to get cute and mess that one up despite whatever efforts the Redditors of the internet try to influence with the betting odds. It was like a 3,400 odds swing yesterday or 2 days ago with some Redditor saying that Will Levis was telling people he's going to go number 1 overall.
Well, we know that was Dave Tepper's original draft crush at quarterback, right?
Yeah.
During the fall, that was the big report. So if that happens, that guy gets to spike the football. But right now, everyone's expectation is for it to be Bryce Young. All right, so here's where things, I don't know, I think it gets a little more interesting after the top 10. That's like, at least from conducting the mock draft, I had the easiest time in the top 10. I had the more challenging situations here the rest of the way. So let's work through it. At number 11, the Tennessee Titans, C.J. Stroud, Ohio State. You know, Mike Vrabel's going to go for the Buckeye, right? Want his new quarterback to be C.J. Stroud. Obviously, I think they need that new direction. I think they wind up being very fortunate that the quarterbacks fall in this scenario, right? I only had 2 in the top 10, and the Titans are able to pick one right here at 11. Number 12, Houston Texans. They get Will Levis right here. I think this is if they're going to pick him, like imagine if they're literally like honestly going to pick him at 2, right? And then they don't. And they get an edge rusher and they get him at 12. And there's probably going to be a lot of if their picks are Tyree Wilson and Will Levis, like I think they're going to get a lot of criticism.
They'll get blasted.
It won't be from me. It will not be from me. I like that. Number 13, the Green Bay Packers. What's fun to consider here is, did they get pick 13 in that Aaron Rodgers trade just to like continue to stick it to the Jets? or do they really want to jump the Patriots for a player? I think that's kind of an interesting lens to look at it through. I have them going with Jackson Smith and Jigba, the wide receiver from Ohio State. I could talk myself into a tight end here. I could talk myself into Brian Branch as well. But I feel like in so many ways, they want to stick it to Aaron Rodgers, and drafting a receiver with a top 15 pick would be a nice way to really signal that they've moved on. At number 14, I have the New England Patriots drafting Broderick Jones, offensive tackle from Georgia. I think they just have a big need there at really right or left tackle. I think they can be interchangeable with Trenton Brown. They've certainly played him at both spots, but they need an answer, right? And I think Broderick Jones can provide that. Number 15, New York Jets, Peter Skoronski, offensive lineman from Northwestern. I mean, this is a team that I think has shown some willingness to draft offensive linemen that don't necessarily have ideal length. And so whether they want to play him at guard or tackle, I think they'll find a spot for him, obviously. But I wound up going with Jones and Johnson for the offensive line destinations before him, with Skoronski sliding here. And I think the versatility here will be really attractive for the Jets. Number 16, the Washington Commanders, Deonte Banks, cornerback from Maryland. He doesn't have to go far to play his college football. I think about what this means for their defense and what they could potentially do with Fuller and playing him more in the slot. Banks is a great tackler. We know Ron Rivera likes tackling from corners. Number 17, the Steelers, Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. We've seen
it's too easy, right?
Yeah, look, and the Steelers do this. They drafted all the Watts, right? They got all the Haywards. You could see them as a team that really values the legacy component. And plus, I wouldn't want to piss off Joey Porter Sr., so you got to pick him, right? Number 18, the Detroit Lions, have them picking Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher from Iowa. I think that allows them to be more versatile with Kaminsky and Pascal, and give them their bookend edge rushers for years to come with him and Hutchinson. Number 19, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Anton Harrison, Oklahoma, offensive tackle. They have a huge hole at tackle, even though they signed Matt Filer. I think Matt Filer can maybe be an interior player for them. Anton Harrison is the left tackle with Tristan Wirfs, and you feel like they're kind of rebuilding this offensive line a little bit. And rounding out the top 20, Seattle Seahawks. This is a pick that I actually kind of like, even though it's a little off the grid, which is probably a good idea if you're going to go off the grid to give him to Seattle. Joe Tippmann, interior offensive lineman from Wisconsin. We didn't get any testing numbers from Joe Tippmann, but based on what Bruce Feldman reported in his freaks list, Tippmann's a freaky guy. And their interior offensive line is my biggest question mark with their team right now. And I think, especially at center, he can come in and probably be a day one starter, has a lot of range. And think about the pillars of that offensive line with, two tackles they drafted last year in Cross and Lucas, and then Tippmann in the middle. I feel like that's really coming together with, Geno Smith as their quarterback and what Ken Walker provided for them at running back. So there you have it. The top 20 picks predictively in the books.
What player were you most surprised to see slot in the top 20? Because top 20 is not a small deal, right? I mean, it's a big hurdle to be in there. And you think about Deonte Banks and the rise that he had, or Joe Tippmann, that surprise pick at 20. Anybody that you kind of caught off guard with how early you were willing to slot them?
Probably Tippmann and Harrison. I mean, I have Harrison coming off the board before Darnell Wright, which I think a lot of people would be surprised by that, right? And so,
yeah. Did you give any consideration to Wright with one of the two AFC East tackle selections?
I did, but I like Jones and Skoronski better as prospects. I think they're better prospects, and I think they're more clean prospects as well. Where Darnell Wright, I think there's some fair questions to be asked there. And I think Broderick Jones and Peter Skoronski are much more clean evaluations.
Do you have any trades coming?
No, I didn't do any trades.
Oh, you didn't do the thing, right? Because that's the thing about doing a predictive mock, right? They're like, if you're going to play the game and you're kind of on the fence about a team, particularly early, you can always try to force a double dip by having them come back into the very tail end of the first round and try to project. Or if it's a matter of, well, I need to make sure I want this player to go in the first round, I will have somebody trade up to draft that player instead of, say, hypothetically, the Chiefs sticking at 31. I'll put Houston in there and have them go get another player that I think really could get into the first round that they would trade up for.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to bring up is these final predictive mock drafts, we're using them for our entry into the Huddle Reports contest where they grade mock draft accuracy and have done so for a number of years. And part of what you're trying to do here is you get a point for every player that's picked in the first round, right? So if they're one of the first round players, 31 players, you get 1 point.
That's fine.
If you get a match, then it's 2 points, right?
2 additional points.
2 additional points, so 3 points. So you play this game of, well, do you just want to try to get the right 31 players? And when you start doing the trade backs in and moving around, you make it hard on the matches at times as well. So you are being mindful of that component when you do your final predictive mock draft.
Perfect score this year is a 93.
And we're hoping to score in the 40s.
Somehow I think the winning score gets less than 50% of the possible maximum points in this year's class.
You said the perfect score is 93?
Yeah. So like 45, if that's a winning score, that's still less than half the points available.
Wow. Yeah. What Kyle's trying to say is it's a tough year to predict.
Yeah. And even the people who have done historically well, they're coming out and being like, yeah, I got no clue.
Yeah,
so you take all the pieces that you hear and then you try to apply some logic to it and you just see how it shakes.
All right. So speaking of hard to predict, the back portion of the draft is the hardest. So we have that coming up. And of course, a little bit of a look at the players I didn't have going in the first round right after a quick break.
Okay, Joseph, the 21st pick has been vacated, which means the 21st pick now belongs to the Baltimore Ravens, who were originally picking 22. For ease of convenience, because we're only counting 31 first-round picks, we'll call this pick 21.
Yeah, thank you, because that's what I have it in my notes.
Correct.
And we don't need me needing to
sliding everything up and down. That's a hard pass.
So with the 21st pick, Los Angeles Chargers have them getting some help for Justin Herbert in the form of tight end Dalton Kincaid. I thought about a receiver here. I think they could play the waiting game at receiver. They can't play the waiting game for a receiving tight end like Dalton Kincaid, and we know how much Kellen Moore likes those tight ends. I think that's a really nice.
What about the Ravens? This is not the Ravens pick?
No, Ravens are 22, right?
Do I just have it flip-flop?
You may. I could have it wrong too, but if I'm wrong, here's the next pick. It's the Ravens 22. I have them going with, and this one's crazy, running back Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. My rationale here, I have 3 things here. 3 things here that made me make this pick. First of all, a lot of buzz about Gibbs going in the first round. So I had to find a spot. And with the Eagles going with Bijan, this is the next spot that made sense to me for Gibbs. Number 2, the Ravens have had a lot of injuries at running back over the last several seasons, and it feels like that's really derailed their offense in so many ways. And so I think a new direction there is a great thing. And number 3, it's like Alabama, right? The Ravens like to pick players from Alabama. So a high character guy, like another weapon for this offense. A little surprising, but that's what I'm rolling with. Number 23, the Minnesota Vikings have them going with defensive tackle Mazi Smith out of Michigan. I think they have a big hole at that nose tackle position for this gap control Brian Flores defense that's coming over. Can't think of a better player to do that than Mazi Smith. In fact, I don't think there's a lot of like super desirable A-gap defenders in this class. So we're going to go with Mazi Smith there. Number 24, here's a surprise, I guess. Jacksonville Jaguars have them going with Ade Baware, the defensive lineman from Northwestern, 280-something pounds, runs in the 4.4s, long arms. Jacksonville likes to run a lot of different fronts with their defense. I think Trent Baalke's going to like him a lot. So I have him going at 24. Number 25, the New York Giants, Osiris Torrance, the interior offensive lineman from Florida. Their interior offensive line needs some significant help. And Torrance, physical blocker, I think about Bobby Johnson and the type of offensive lineman that he's liked in the past. This is more his style. Um, they'll get more physical in the run game with Torrance as well. Pair him with Evan Neal on the right side, and they've got some building blocks to go with. Number 26, the Dallas Cowboys, Michael Mayer, tight end from Notre Dame. Could have went a number of different directions here, but I don't know. I feel like that's an area of their team that's super upgradable, and they've helped the receiving core so far this offseason for Dak. I think they need a tight end, so that's the direction there. Number 27, the Buffalo Bills have them picking wide receiver Zay Flowers out of Boston College. I think he's their do-everything slot player. Yards after catch has not been a thing for the Bills in a number of years. I think he helps with that. Route running, he'll certainly provide a boost in that category as well. Also, I think he's got the right DNA for a Bills-type player with just getting a chance to be around him at the last 2 ACC media days, listening to the way that his head coach, Jeff Hafley, speaks about him, the stories that came from the Shrine. I think the Bills will be into all that type of stuff. Number 28, the Cincinnati Bengals. Kalijah Cansey, defensive tackle out of Pitt, is the pick there. This was something that I wanted to do, and then Albert Breer in his mock draft today talked about the Bengals wanting more interior pass rush. They get that in Kalijah Cansey. They're also a team that's been willing to go with size outliers in terms of arm length. Eric Steinbach, one of them recently, and they drafted, I can't remember the other player, but they've been willing. I said it the other day on the podcast. His name escapes me right now. But top 40 picks with size-deficient arms.
Well, they did Jonah Williams, too.
They did Jonah, yeah, so they're willing to do it, so put them down for that. Number 29, the New Orleans Saints, Brian Brzee, defensive tackle from Clemson. I think they just need help on that D-line, and that's, to me, especially on the interior. I mean, they need help at defensive end too, but more help is needed on the inside. Brian Brzee's versatile, and if everything's right for him, he's a top 10 caliber talent, and I think the Saints will pounce on that. And they haven't been nervous about some of the injury stuff. With they're willing to go down that route as well with prospects. So that made me feel good there. Number 30, the Philadelphia Eagles, Miles Murphy, edge rusher from Clemson. Feels like a Howie Roseman type player, right? I mean, in terms of position, the makeup of the player, obviously some coming needs at the position on the edge. They want as many as possible. So I have them going with Miles Murphy. And then the last pick in the first round, 31, Kansas City Chiefs, Darnell Wright, offensive tackle from Tennessee. Can be their right tackle. Yeah, that one worked out real well for them. They have a big need at tackle right now. They're going to want to play Jawan Taylor on the left side. Get the right tackle here in Darnell Wright.
Wright and Trey Smith playing next to each other?
Yeah.
You can move some bodies, huh?
Should be able to.
I'll run for 5 yards per carry behind those two in the run game.
I think I can get 2.
Hey, how crazy is it with all the talk about how bad the interior defensive line group was in the fall? I'm sitting here looking at it. We obviously have Jalen Carter, and you've got Mozzie Smith, Tommy Adebawore, Kalijah Cansey, Brian Brzee. This is a very healthy amount of interior defensive linemen for what 6 months ago everybody pounded as being just a terrible class.
Maybe I'm overrating these guys. I don't know, man.
No, I don't think you are, because a bunch of them are on mine too. So
good, and I still like Keanu Benton quite a bit as the second round guy. So
that'll be a player that comes off in the top 50. I've heard Pittsburgh really likes him. I know New Orleans, if they don't go Brzee and they go in a different direction, would make some sense for them with their need on the interior defensive line as well. And they got a pick at 40 or 40. So
yeah,
some hurdles there.
I want to point out some of the players that didn't go, and I'm not saying it was easy to leave these off, and you're probably thinking about them as well. So I want to acknowledge some of these guys that I didn't have a spot for. Hendon Hooker, quarterback out of Tennessee. I don't have a spot for him. I think he'll probably go on day 2 for sure. Receivers, right? Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, those guys didn't go. DeJuan Jones, I think that's becoming a bit more of a
consensus
expectation. Yeah, he could be a second-round pick. Will McDonald, I don't know if that's much of a surprise. I think he's a good second-round pick. Maybe he could sneak into the back 10 picks. No linebackers at all. So Campbell, Sanders, Simpson, they all fall out. No Brian Branch and no Emmanuel Forbes. And those are kind
Keon
of the
White,
can have a spot for Keon
and he
White, who
he gonna be there.
is going to be there at the draft. So, I mean, usually there's some type of expectation that they're going to go on
Right.
night one if they're there. So, look, I probably made some mistakes along the way, but when it's all said and done, that's what I put together predictably.
7, 8. I'm counting 9, 10, and I'll tell you what I'm counting in just a second.
Sure, it's differences between mine and
11,
yours.
12, 13. We have 13 current common picks between the two mocks. Mine that I'm going to go over later today and the one that you just did. But mine's not the final version yet. I'm going to take advantage of the driving to the store to buy a new microphone and driving back to just even further overthink this. But 13 out of 31 we currently overlap on.
Well, I guess if everyone wants to find out what it ends up being, you should
There's a plug
come
for
back
you.
into the feed,
Yeah.
right? YouTube channel, podcast feed, wherever you want to join us. Come back and see how Kyle stacks up the first round.
We're going to stack it later today so you can plan accordingly. Come on back and see us. I'm Kyle Krabs. He's Joe Marino. Special shout out to our everydayers who are plugged in with everything we do on a daily basis here on the Locked On Network, because it is your team every day. As Joe said, you can find us on the YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe to the YouTube channel because we are live Thursday night, Friday night, and intermittently throughout the day on Saturday. We got a lot of great content coming for the 2023 NFL Draft. We hope you plan accordingly. And thanks for checking out Joe's final predictive 2023 NFL mock draft.